the name of the event suggests, AOF has partnered with FedEx to provide robust support for small businesses looking to create or develop an online presence through the FedEx E-Commerce Learning Lab. We saw how critical digital sales became, especially during COVID-19 lockdowns, and FedEx is committed to providing resources that empower small businesses through recovery and success. We are really grateful to be one of FedEx's nonprofit partners. This seminar series, which is one component of the broader Learning Lab program, dives deep into some of the intricacies of e-commerce operations. All right, so we have the recording that we're going to get ready for you guys. You are already in the chat, and my final housekeeping item is right after the webinar. There is going to be a very brief survey that is going to be emailed out. We would love to hear from you. We can use that to help us continue to grow and improve these webinars. So please take a few minutes and answer those quick questions for us. All right, now I think it is time to go ahead and jump in. I'm really excited to introduce you to our two expert speakers today, and they are going to be taking us through all about SEO. First, I'm thrilled to introduce Duncan Castellino. Duncan is the Digital Demand Generation Marketing Manager at FedEx. He has over 13 years of data and digital marketing experience, driving online conversions on Google and FedEx.com. He currently leads the search and paid performance practice for FedEx. His team's main KPI is to drive new accounts and traffic to FedEx.com. Based in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, he is very much enjoying being a Bay Area sports fan, the 49ers. Hi, Duncan.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, great to have you. All right. And next we have Eric Adams. Eric is not just any culinary expert. He has over 15 years under his belt. He is the mastermind behind Dog and Whistle. Originating from Gary, Indiana, Eric's path from the bustling restaurant scene led him to confronting a pressing issue, the wastage of premium ingredients. His answer, Dog and Whistle, an innovative venture that turns surplus food into gourmet delights for our four-legged friends. Having made waves in programs like the FedEx E-Commerce Learning Lab, Dell for Startups, and the Upcycled Food Association, and a memorable appearance on Revolt TV's Bet on Black, Eric's vision now stands tall in Las Vegas, transforming the pet food landscape and championing a sustainable future. Great to have you, Eric.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. All right, so we are going to go ahead and jump into these questions. And Duncan, I would love to kick it off with you and just start with what is SEO and why do small businesses need it?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Technically, SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and that's different than SEM, which is paid search. SEO on a per search is free. And what it really means is you are setting up your website so that search engines like Google will rank your website higher. This is really important because we know that almost every customer journey begins with them involving search in some way. So being where your customers are makes SEO really important. That's why every small business needs it.
Yes, makes so much sense. And it just sounds like it's so key in being kind of findable on the internet, which is a huge place. Okay, so Eric, I would love to kick it to you. What techniques do you use to help optimize your website for searchability?
So this actually took a lot of time of me just studying a lot of different videos and learning organically. You want to look at a few things. So a few things you want to look at is you want to look at your keyword research and your usage, right? When you conduct your keyword research, you want to identify the terms and phrases that actually cater to your target audience. This also helps the search engines better index your content. So for instance, with me, when you look at pet food, things of that nature, you want to use those key words that really cascade that information or cascade that message to your customer. Image optimization is another key technique as well, because you want to use those descriptive and rich alt text keyword images that can help the customer better understand the contents of your images, as well as improve accessibility. And then lastly, the last thing this is the most important thing out of them all, is this right here, your cell phone, right? So you want to make sure that your website is mobile friendly, right? It doesn't have that mobile friendly design where it can easily translate from your computer to your cell phone, because a lot of our customers, they do a lot of shopping. They do a lot of searching on their phones. So you want to ensure that your website is responsive and mobile friendly.
Ah, yes, I love that. And I love that you even included the piece of images and the importance of making sure those are also tagged correctly to optimize your website a little bit more. I would love to kick the same question to you, Duncan. What techniques do you use to help optimize your website for searchability?
Yeah, first I'll start with everything Eric said was spot on. We do all of those same things at a corporation like FedEx. The things I would add to his is, like, we look at link structure and folder structure. So we spend a good amount of time looking at how we've organized the website and how those different pages connect to each other. Because when these search engines like Google, their bots crawl your website, what they're doing is creating a map of what your website looks like. And you send signals to Google by saying, boy, this page is really important because I'm going to link to it from a lot of places. And Google says, that's probably a really important page because 25 other pages link to it. So we pay a lot of attention to that. Some interesting things to think about is like your header and your drop-down menu are great opportunities because those exist on all your pages. And if you have a really important page, you might want to include that in your header. Make sure it's in your header, because when Google sees that, that's a link from every one of your pages to that one page. So if you have a story, a product that you want it to rank higher on, think about your link structure. Eric answered the question really well. That's the part I would probably add to this.
Ah, wonderful. That's another key piece. And I see some questions coming in the chat around this particular topic. So to those of you who are dropping questions in the chat, we see them, and we're going to have a live Q&A at the end. So we will definitely circle back around to as many of these questions as we can. All right. So moving forward a little bit, can you use SEO for your social media presence? And if so, how can you use that? And Eric, I'd love to start with you.
So this was one of the biggest challenges that I had, because when I first started the company, I created, Dog and Whistle wasn't available because there was a pub out in England that had the profile name for Instagram. So I created Dog Whistle Vegas. And then for Twitter, Dog Whistle Vegas wasn't available, so it had to be Dog and Whistles, and then Facebook and things of that nature. So one of the biggest things is that you want to make sure that it's a consistent branding across all of your social media platforms, right? I think Twitter's X now, excuse me. So just make sure that your name is somewhat streamlined across the board on all your social media platforms. But then on top of that, you want to optimize your profile. So you want to use those relevant keywords in your bios, right? So if you're doing on-demand delivery, or you're doing fresh, or you're doing sustainable, or any of those keywords, those are going to be those items that's really going to pick up in terms of your optimizing your profile that reflects the brand and the product. Engagement is the biggest thing I think that everyone is looking for right now. Is how are you engaging with your customer, right? If they're taking the time to respond to your post, I think out of the same sense, we should have that respect for them to respond as well, either positive or negative. We have to be very open to that feedback. Videos, multimedia videos, as you can see now, the day and age, everyone has maybe that 15 to 30 second time span where they're just looking at those videos and they're grasping it. So how can you take those different videos, leverage it to your brand, your message? And there's a lot of different tools out there that can really assist you with cutting those videos in a short period of time. And then link to your website. I think that's the biggest thing too, is make sure that you always have a link that can go directly to your website in terms of through Linktree, things of that nature. Have a link to your website is so important.
Yes, so many great tips in there from the beginning, just like finding your word, like how are people going to find you on the internet and all those different social media platforms. But I really like what you said about ensuring that in the bio, you're kind of consistently using those words and that SEO to make sure that people are able to find you in all the different places. Love that. Okay, so same question for you, Duncan. When it comes to using SEO for social media presence, like can you use it and how can you use it?
Yeah, I think I promised Eric and I didn't compare notes before, but we had very similar thoughts. I was going to go to video also as well. You know, YouTube is really like the second or third largest website in the world out there behind Google itself. And I would take the, you know, your approach of video in two forms. There's kind of like promotional content where you're kind of describing stuff. And then there's also how to. That's another thing. You know, a lot of people use YouTube to solve their problem and want physical visuals of what's going on. And, you know, think about creating how-to videos and using YouTube there. It's going to be a great place for you to find the right customer potentially, because that person's always trying to solve a problem in the moment. And, you know, I would say there's a difference, right? If you're doing a shorter video that's maybe more about you, it's got to be shorter, like Eric's described. If you go into the how-tos, don't be afraid to get a little bit something of real value back to the customer. That's what we hear on our side too. Customers want their problem solved, and they'll go through a little bit longer video than you might expect just to understand how exactly to do it.
Ooh, yes, I really like that. Don't be afraid to do a little bit of a longer form video in order to provide that high value content. That's wonderful. Yes.
And just one note too. I think that, you know, in the day and age that we're in now, AI is really helpful. There is a website on there that, you know, I can drop later on in the chat, that actually will take your video and specifically do 3 or 4 videos for you within 15 or 30 seconds and have those keywords that can, you know, just be based on analysis of the algorithms that will really pop and cater to that guest. So don't be afraid of AI.
Wonderful. Thank you for mentioning that, Eric. I love that. Okay, so we talked about social media. We kind of talked about what is SEO, but I would love, Duncan, to hear from you. How can SEO boost your e-commerce sales?
Yeah. So, you know, when you're selling something, you know, what you're doing is typically solving a customer problem. And what customers do, at least I do, and I think many people have this experience, is when they have a problem or an issue that they need to resolve, they look for information for how to solve it. And in this day and age, and really for the last decade, Google's kind of that starting point for the vast majority of customer journeys, right? So people go to Google, put their question in there, and then they look for the answer that Google has, and they use that to kind of formulate what they're going to do. Good SEO is going to lead to you being ranked higher on that search engine results page, meaning you'll be further and further up. The organic side SEO, what we're talking about, is a little bit below the paid side, but it's still up there. It's typically in the top. It's the third or fourth link if there are paid ads. So it's really, SEO is really important because it means you're going to get better rankings, and the higher up you are, the more traffic you drive to your website. The other thing to probably mention is, like, especially if you have a company where you're selling multiple products, let's say you have a SKU list of like 100 or 200 SKUs, you're obviously not going to have that on your homepage. SEO, because they mapped your whole website, they're going to pull the specific page all the way to the front. And so that allows your customer to kind of skip all the way to where you're selling and you're explaining what your product is or that service is right in front of them as soon as possible. And so that's why I think SEO is really important to boost e-commerce sales, because it gets you traffic.
Yes. And when you said it takes you directly to that page, you know, you're ready to buy, like you're interested and you're ready to go. That makes it a lot easier as a consumer to go ahead and click add to cart. I know I've been there. So before I move on, Eric, there's a couple of questions in the chat about the AI resource you mentioned. Could you mention that again so we can share that with the audience today? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute.
No.
So there are different tools such as CapCut. I know that CapCut does have a AI function. And then I am looking for the other company right now. Give me 1 second. That will actually take your link of your own video from YouTube. So if you post a video on YouTube, you can actually post it to that AI, to that website, and it will make 30-second videos. That way it will not only have a keyword or the algorithm in terms of what would be most attractive for our customers, the customer base. It would also give you an example. It would put the words on there too, so it would do a full transcript. So it actually helps out so much. So I am looking for it right now. Give me 1 second, and if you want to come back to me, that'll be great.
Yeah, no worries, and we'll have time to we'll make sure that we include it whenever it comes up. We have some time at the end for questions, so feel free to take your time. Okay, so we've kind of talked about how SEO can boost your e-commerce sales. But another really key important piece is just finding out if our SEO techniques are working. And so I would love, Eric, if you're okay to start this one off, how do you know if your SEO techniques are working?
Yeah, so I think that everyone on here, hopefully they have a subscription, email subscription type of program, right? There's a bunch of them out there, and you can look at your actual click-through rate. So once you do send those mailing lists or those emails out to your customers, you can check a bounce rate, right? You can see exactly who is opening up that email, who's not opening up that email. That also gives you specific time ranges in terms of when to send it off, because we do have a lot of customers that's in different time zones. Your keyword rankings, obviously you can check that through Google keyword research. They have a lot of different functions, different tools for their Google ads that you can check through that as well. And then organically, your traffic itself, right? So if you're utilizing WordPress and you have a WooCommerce or Shopify, things of that nature, you're able to monitor, just organically through your sales, right? Your sales, I think it will speak volume in terms of your organic traffic and what you have consistently coming in. But we also have to do the work too, right? We can't just assume that guests are going to continue to keep coming back. We have to entice them. Not saying discount the product, but build that relationship with your customer, because I take it back to the restaurant industry. It's all about hospitality, how you make your customers feel. You want them to come back. You want them to feel valued. That's going to increase that click-through rate. That's going to increase that organic traffic for you.
Yes, wonderful. And thank you for mentioning the different ways that you can look back and check your different techniques through sales or email marketing. And then same question for you, Duncan. How do you know if your SEO techniques are working?
Yeah, so the things we do is we look at and measure the rankings, right? And what we do in the rankings of where Google ranks our pages, I should say, we break it down in what percentage of our pages show up in the top 3, because that's so important. Then it's the 4 through 6 is the next batch. So we have these batches and we have our rankings. We track that. We also look at the clicks, right? So if we're at the top, that's great, but people also need to engage with that information. Are we at the right spot? Do we have the right descriptions like Google showing, so that when people see that page, it resonates? And then page views, like Eric mentioned, is really important, as well as what I describe as business outcomes, right? And basically sales, amongst other things. How are we tracking on those? And what we do is we know SEO is a long game, right? So SEO is not something that if everyone over here went and did SEO tonight, your website wouldn't really change too much. Your ranking wouldn't change tomorrow. It's a long game. And so we look at the trends over months. So we say not even this month versus last month. It's looking at over the course of like 3 or 4 months at least to see an upward trend, because sometimes it takes a while for the bots to come back and crawl, if you don't make a request for a reindex. So we're tracking all those KPIs I mentioned earlier over time. And because our competitors are doing the same thing, it's something that we're going to continue at least to monitor, because sometimes our rankings are influenced not by what we do, but what other people are doing in the same space as us.
Yes, totally understand.
I see someone put in here bots and crawling. It's probably just worthwhile for a second to describe that. So the best way to describe bots and crawling is all these search engines like Google have automated bots. It's not a human being, but they out there, they're crawling your website. They look at your structure and your codes on your website to see like what pages exist, what's the name of the page, what's the description, all that information that we talked about earlier. They're taking that back and they're collecting it, and they're using that to create the map. And so indexing or crawling is crawling is the process of them going out and getting the information. Once they get that information, they create this map of what pages exist where and what they think what information they think exists on every page. And that is like that and their algorithm of how they organize this stuff is the crown jewels of Google, and why it works so well, because they have all this information and they know where to get there.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for describing that a little bit more as we kind of figure out all the lingo. It's got its whole language, I feel like SEO does. So it's super helpful to go through those pieces. Okay, so Eric, I know you've mentioned a couple of tools, and I would love to hear from you, like what SEO tools are out there that you've seen.
Yeah, so me personally, I utilize WordPress, WooCommerce, and they have a plugin called Yoast SEO. I would say a good introductory plugin for just a person with that limited knowledge, which is me, right? I'm continuing to learn every single day about SEO, and one day hopefully achieve that knowledge as much as Duncan. But other than that, we do have, once again, Google Keyword Planner. You can actually look on that through your Google Ads, and that would be a good tool to have as well. Another website that I use is Social Blade. Social Blade actually gives you a grade based on your website, your social media, things of that nature, and it would do a comparison compared to your competitors, right? So I think that you would utilize those different tools, and that would be able to assist you.
Oh, yes, thank you. And we had a question about your thoughts on Yoast SEO on WordPress, so that was perfect. It's great to know that there are tools out there, especially, as you learn a little bit more about the features and continue to kind of grow. And I think it really ties into Duncan's point that it is a long game. And so that's really helpful to know that it's kind of something you're going to keep learning no matter where you are. All right. So, Eric, can you tell us, when do you know if you need a professional to help you with your SEO?
I'm actually looking at the chat as well. So Social Blade is the website, not Social Rate. When you know that you need professional help, I would say that if you have that limited SEO knowledge, I think it would be times to do some type of outsourcing to either someone that's either locally, or you can use your network. The biggest thing you can do is, if you have a LinkedIn, reach out to your network and just ask questions. Ask if they know someone that can assist. Competitive industries. My industry, this is the pet food industry is a $20 billion industry, and it's very competitive because a lot of pet parents, they can go with a cheaper alternative as opposed to a higher priced alternative. They may care less about upcycling, but they may care more about the price of the package itself, right? So it's all about that competitive industry, and it can be challenging to achieve and maintain high search engine rankings. So that would be another thing to take a look at too. And then time constraints. as a one-person show, you know, there can be times where you just don't have the time to do it. So looking at outsourcing may just be an opportunity to do it, right? But then also, if you do have the time, educate yourself. You know, there's a lot of tutorials, a lot of different things that can assist us with learning that, you know, you just have to dive in, you know, and from a professional standpoint, that's one. From a personal standpoint, or if you want to get and do those grassroots marketing and put those boots on the ground, you know, you're doing SEO by just having conversations with guests. So if you're doing, with customers, excuse me. So if you're doing farmers markets, or if you're doing different type of events, you're automatically driving those people to your website. You're speaking about certain things. So don't be afraid to talk to every single person that walks by your table. Say hello. They may not even have a pet, but you can talk about, you know, a friend that has a pet, whatever the case may be. It's those different techniques that can assist. But when you need professional help, it's usually with time constraint.
Yes, such an excellent point, especially I'm sure many of our attendees can relate to being maybe a solopreneur or having a small staff. And so there are plenty of things on your to-do list every day. So definitely bringing in that support if you feel like you don't have enough time or you need a little bit more just external support. Okay, so Eric, if a business owner can only do 2 simple things to improve their SEO, where should they start?
Keyword research. It's one of the biggest things, right? You want to look at those keywords that's really going to drive a lot of foot traffic to your page. But that keyword has to stay consistent. But then also another thing, the keywords can change too because of the algorithm. So there could be something that's trending that may be different from something from previous day. So your keyword research is very important. So Google Keyword Planner or use your Google Ads, utilize that. Google Trends was big back in my day that I was utilizing. So I would just actually type that word in and I could just see, you know, the trajectory of it from a rating. And that would be another option too. But then also your on-page optimization. So your website is really important. Like Duncan was saying, particularly your homepage and those key landing pages, you want to make sure that you're incorporating the primary keyword in the title tags, right? So you want to make sure that everything coincides, everything is structured, streamlined is most important. And then also ensuring that your images are relevant. You know, if you need to compress your images to ensure that your website is moving a little bit quicker, then that may have to be something that you need to do. So those are the most important things I think. And just one more nugget, just to add in there, is your high quality content, right? If you can put videos on your website, make sure that they're not slowing down the process of your website loading. Make sure it's videos or pictures or media that can actually grasp your customer's attention.
Amazing. Yes, we love all the little nuggets. So if there's ever any additional tips, we want them. And we've talked so much about keywords, and I really want to take a minute and Duncan, ask you, what is keyword research and why do you need to do it?
Yeah, so keyword research is, like we were describing, it's identifying what are the keywords that your customers and people are using in Google and how often are they using them. And it's really, it's so important because you want to put the majority of your SEO effort against usually the largest keywords are the ones that have the lowest competition. So that way you're going to be ranked higher and you're going to drive as much traffic as you can to your website that's relevant to your business. So, you know, the way that we do keyword research on our side is it starts with the first process of understanding like what's the goal of that page and what are you trying to do? What is the state of mind of the customer, right? So we're brainstorming phrases and keywords. For the example, I'll use Eric's website. It's dog food, it's high-end dog food. I might think of a starting keywords. You have to have a tool so you can do this keyword research in. But once you have these starting points, like what is the best dog food for my dog? Great ways to get my pet healthy. We brainstorm a few of those ideas to kind of get it started, and you go into these tools, and then you can start to analyze the search volume and competition. There are two different things there, right? Search volume is going to typically show you the number of monthly searches for that phrase, and that's important because the bigger the better, obviously. But sometimes even small is not bad, because the second part of it is your competition. Let's say dog food, as Eric described, is probably got a giant number out there, but I'm guessing it's also got a giant number of competitors. So Eric, you'll have a really hard time scoring well over there. Anyone would, right? Meanwhile, maybe there's one of gourmet dog food, filet dog food or something like that. That might have a really small volume because there's a smaller amount of people there, but there's not a lot of competition, I would suspect, for that type of stuff. And so that's why you're playing this two-sided game of how big is the keyword out there and how many people are fighting for it. Because you've got to then, you're looking for that sweet spot, right? Ideally, you'd find some keyword phrases that, and I should have added, like when you do the keyword research, a lot of the tools will say also related keywords, and you start to get up with the next set of lists. And that's why you start with the brainstorming of like, here's my top 10, and it gets to top 20. And you do some homework, and then you end up with like your target keywords, meaning like, okay, these are the ones I think are big and I think I'm going to win in because it's not too competitive and it's a good enough size. Once you have those keywords, what we do is we go to the team or the team that's building the content, and we look at the website we're building or the web page we're building, and we say, these are the phrases we need to put on the page. These are the phrases we need, especially in the headers and the titles and the section blocks or in the image descriptions, because that's when Google, as they're doing their crawling and their indexing, they're like, oh, dog food, filet flavored dog food. Oh, I see it's all over this page. It's probably a good page for that. And I've seen it's linked from many places. I think it's going to have a lot of results in there. So let's go ahead and bring it in and rank it higher and higher. And so that's an example of how keywords research can help you kind of improve your SEO. Don't be afraid what many people describe as long tail keywords. So like the example of like a big keyword would be like dog food. Long tail keyword might be something like dog food that's really high end, and like it's a longer phrase that's going to have smaller search, that's going to have a smaller volume on it. Sometimes it's better to win on 20 long tail keywords that bring collectively as much volume as one big keyword that may have a lot of competition behind it.
Ooh, that's an excellent point. And so many things to think about is like, you want a keyword that people are going to, and getting into the mind of your customer is so important in that piece. And actually there's a question in the chat that I think directly relates to this. So you kind of mentioned, don't be afraid of having like 20 longer keywords instead of, that might have the same amount of interest. So there's someone in the chat who is asking about how many keywords should you have. So is there a number that you're looking for, Duncan, or is it more of kind of that balance?
I would say it's a balance. There isn't a formula. Like, at least we don't have a formula. If we do, let us know. It's a lot of times the keywords are related, right? It would be something like dog food, my pet food and things like that. They're kind of closely together, and it's a little bit of art to go along with like quant numbers, and you have to like play with it. Don't spread yourself too thin, because then you are then doing the opposite of what Google wants. Google wants pages that answer the question. And so if you answer 50 questions on one, well, that's bad way to describe it. But if you spread like 50 different types of questions on one page, Google doesn't know what's going on onto your website. And they're like, well, I don't know if that's the right answer because it's got a lot of stuff to it, unless you've organized it in certain ways, like in like an FAQ and stuff like that. So I would tell you, the way we've done it on our team, we may be targeting between 5 to 20 core keywords. By that time, we kind of have answered the essentials of the question.
Makes total sense. Yes, kind of having that key question and people know where to go. Yes, Eric.
Oh, sorry, didn't want to interrupt. One of the biggest things that I did early on is just I acted as the customer myself and just went into a search engine and just typed in random things and just see what actually pops up, right? Put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and type in pet clothes and see what pops up, right? Or pet food or nails or whatever your brand is. Type it into your search engine, do some studying on that part, and that way you can kind of see who is actually ranking higher.
That's an excellent tip, and also speaks to a question of competition, because there's a question in the chat about how can I see what my competitors, what their keywords might be, and I see that fitting in really nicely. All right, I just want to pause right here because we are now moving into our live Q&A section. So I've been collecting some questions throughout our conversation, but if you're here and you're like, I have a question, we're going to try and get to as many of those as we can with our experts. So please go ahead and drop them in the chat. This first one is going to be for Eric. So you were talking about the image optimization when we first started, and someone was wondering if you could talk more about what image optimization means.
So in terms of image optimization, you would just want to you want to have that image that possibly grasps that customer's attention a little bit more than others, right? I think that I'll use my business for example, right? Pet food. So you have a picture of a dog eating just a pet cookie or a dog biscuit, right? Is that really interesting compared to a dog that's eating a bowl of fresh food that you can actually see all the different ingredients and all the different items that's inside of it, because it's more appealing as opposed to just seeing a dog just eat a biscuit. I think that's the most important thing too. And then also the word that's associated with that picture, right? So carrots or fresh or rescued or heart healthy. I think those would be the most important things. So always think outside of the box and look at those different pictures that could be more enticing for your customers, right?
If I could add, Eric, to that, on image, we talk about this a good amount when we work on FedEx.com. The two things I would add is like within the HTML for an image, there's an opportunity to put a description for it, and Google reads that. And so Google says, like to Eric's point, if it's a dog eating food, you can literally use those words and say all description equals, blah, 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 like dog eating food. And then Google reads that. So in addition to like viewing the image, it's kind of like looking at the words to it. The other thing I'll add on images that we look at is you don't want too big or too small. Too big reduces your page speed and makes it harder for, especially in mobile devices, for them to download that image. Too small might result in a grainy image. So you got to double check what size image you're using and how you've kind of coded it.
Thank you.
Excellent tips on not only making sure that they're labeled correctly, and since Google is reading all of that, but also that they're good quality images for sure. Okay, so Duncan, this question is for you. So earlier we talked about the bots crawling across different websites, and you mentioned re-indexing or indexing a page. So someone asked, how can you make a request for this re-index?
Typically, those are done within Google Search Console. So Google Search Consoles are tied to every website, and there's a function within there to request. So it's not like a on-demand, you press a button and it does it. You send a request in, and then it would be queued up, and your website would eventually have a re-index.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. We have another question from the audience. How do you know how Google ranks your current page? And Duncan, I'll start with you.
Sorry, can you repeat that question? Though there was a hiccup.
Oh yeah, of course. How do you know how Google ranks your current page?
So we know that based on an enterprise tool that we have. So we have a reporting tool that we've sourced they provide that information to us through this tool. And we basically group similar pages together. A lot of times we have multiple products in the same product family. And so rather than us trying to measure every single page individually, we kind of group them into our big categories. And we have like at FedEx, we have a lot of categories, but like our group typically looks at like 20 categories or so. And then as an aggregate, it's like what percentage of our pages are in the, again, that top 3, the top 6 and top 10 and so forth. That way we try and maximize those numbers.
Gotcha. Okay. So you have a tool that helps you in that. That makes sense. Okay. So the next question, and I'll start with Eric. We talked a little bit about emails and when you use, your email system to get words out. How do you apply SEO to emails?
So the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you utilize a reputable email service provider, right? So for example, MailChimp, Constant Contact, for example, those would be 2. Use a clean email list. Make sure that it's always updated. You don't want to continue to send emails to maybe people that are not as responsive, because it's just going to eventually go into their spam or go into their junk folder. So just make sure that you're monitoring that. Optimize email subject lines too. So your subject lines want to be something that's a little bit more personable. Usually when I send emails from the company, I have it kind of optimized in terms of what's coming up holiday wise, right? So Halloween is one, or Thanksgiving, or just have it more personalized. Then that way it's not considered more as a junk mail for you. And then also, once again, become the consumer. Go to one of your competitors, sign up for their mailing list, and you can look and see. I've signed up for almost every single pet food provider that's out there, big names, and I'm getting their emails daily, just getting inspiration to see, okay, what is it that's engaging that a lot of my customers are not getting, right? You can add videos to your emails, to your email templates as well. So a lot of TikTok videos are now becoming a thing where people can see those, click on those links and see those funny videos of dogs doing certain things. So that would be my suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know you mentioned competitors. So I'll start off with Duncan on this one, and then Eric, if you have anything to add. Someone is asking, how can I determine what keywords my competitors are using?
Okay, so this is kind of a difficult, I don't know if there's a right answer from an SEO for this keyword, for this question, but the way I would describe it is when you go to their website, for the most part, you see what words they're emphasizing, what phrases they're emphasizing on there, especially if you're doing it yourself. You kind of know like, oh, they're also going for these type of keywords. Again, we have that. There's an enterprise tool that we have. So for us, we have our competitors kind of in the same categories we score ourselves for our rank. We ask for their competitors to be scored as well. And so that's the way we have an idea of like, are we doing pretty well? And how many places we have. The difference between us and our competitors. So we don't, keyword competition is maybe more so for paid search in my opinion. When you're going and you're looking for like you're competitively bidding and you kind of know how much impression share you've lost because of other people bidding in your space.
Totally makes sense. Thank you for that. And it sounds like the start is just going to the competition's website and kind of looking for the things that might pop up and pop out at you, might give you a good idea.
I mean, there may be some paid services that will help expedite that process. Me personally, I like to save my money, so I'll just go ahead and take a day or so like that and just go down a rabbit hole of just typing in certain things or going to their websites and just doing the work myself. But I mean, if you have that capital to do it, there's some incredible companies out there. You would just have to take the time to search for them.
Makes sense.
Yeah, every field, every industry is really competitive. So you're not going to go to hundreds of websites to try to identify keyword research. You're better off focusing on your efforts and what keywords are you're trying to win on. Like, what's your strategy, I guess, would be my response. And if that's your strategy, then let's focus in on those keywords and try and win in that area. Don't necessarily worry about the competition, but create differentiation as yourself.
Yes, I really like that piece of just kind of making yourself stand out. And speaking of standing out, one of the questions is, if I have a product that is super niche, what do you recommend? Like, how do you recommend I take on SEO? So I would start with Eric.
We're in the same boat, right? I think upcycling it's something that a lot of my customers don't really know about. Or when they do the research, they think that it's actual food waste, but it's not food waste per se. I think that, you have to do a lot of explainer videos, right? You have to walk your customers through the process, and now it's easier. I feel like it's easier now to do those explainer videos than anything, because you have to use that social media. You could do it through your email template and put a explanation in terms of that niche market. But you're going to have to educate your customers. That's the difficulty of having a very niche product, right? I'm still educating my customers to this day, because 4 years ago when I started this company, people really didn't talk about sustainability or talk about upcycling. But as the years progress, now it's starting to get a little bit more attention, right? Everyone's looking at sustainability, and that's now becoming a hot ticket. So it's just educating your customer. And I think that, either having a education portion on your website or on your email template or even through your social media channels, you have to take the time to explain to your customers what brings value is the most important.
Yeah, that makes sense. Love that. Duncan, anything to add there?
No, not really. You did a good job.
Perfect. Okay, this is a great question that maybe some others are thinking about. Someone is asking, if I choose not to handle SEO myself, like, what are some features that I can look for to identify a reputable company or person to hire? And Eric, I'll kick that one to you.
I think I said it earlier. Utilize your network. With joining different groups of the Upcycled Food Association, I'm able to kind of bounce ideas off of, my fellow members. There's going to be times where you're on those platforms and you get that spam that says they can do this, do that for you. You may have to take those conversations and see where it goes. And sometimes it may bring validity, it may not. But you have to give it a shot. I've done a lot of conversation, conversing with a lot of different people and just asking, who did your SEO, or who would you recommend, or even someone that creates your website. If you have someone that does your website for you, maybe you can pick their brain. That would be the best thing to do. But you just have to take a shot. Me personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable just saying, oh, this person does this, because then what if you have a poor experience with that? Then it's just, hey, Eric said go here and it's not working. But you have to really just put in the time to do the investigating and put the effort into finding one.
Yeah.
If I could add, the thing I would do if it was my business, I would ask them for results from other businesses of show me what you did. Right. Talk and like asking questions of like, hey, they were getting 25% of their web traffic from SEO or organic traffic. And then after I did this work, it went to 45. And I think that's where I see a question around price point. I think that's where you can start to also do an analysis, right? If you knew what's the value of 100 more customers coming to your website, if you know that value, then you can know what you are willing to pay, right? Now you know what your max capacity is of what you're willing to pay, and that's the way I would ask that question back to them of what's the most reputable way. Ask them for past results. A good company or good person should have examples in their hip pocket.
Testimonials.
Yes, that is an excellent piece of information to take on and to really make sure that you're able to vet the business coming through. And also, Duncan, I love the way you framed the price point question. It really depends on how much value that this SEO could bring, and then you can kind of the optimization could bring, and then you can address it with your business. That was really great. All right, I think we have time for maybe one more question. So this question is about meta tags. So what resources are available to generate effective tags for your site? So I'm going to kick this to Duncan. I may be a little bit out of my depth with this one, so I'm not. I'm just going to kick it to you.
I would say, to do SEO, meta tags are within the HTML. And I think what you need to do is have a good technical person who runs your website, so that you're not listing 1,000 keywords or keywords that you want in your meta tags. That's not the right strategy. You want to have the right way, and you want to make sure it's also done in a way that works on every page, and you'll have to do some cleanup and maintenance. So I would say start with having a really good technical webmaster for your website, or whatever the role you want to describe it as, the person in charge of your website.
Yeah.
And and if that's you, then I think it's time to do a little bit of homework and research and learning.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think that, if you're going to look at someone that does the front end or the back end, look for, utilize that person that created that website for you. And I'll give a piece of advice, and this was some advice that I had to learn the hard way, that if you're going to utilize those resources or outsource your website to, somewhere else, utilize a prepaid credit card. How about that? Utilize a prepaid credit card. That's my one big piece of advice. Have it loaded with a certain amount of cash on there, and just utilize that card, so that way, if something does come back to, in terms of your business bank, you're protected. So utilize a prepaid card with some money on there just to load it when you're doing something like that.
Yes, we definitely want to protect our finances when we're working in business. And okay, we have one last question. I just really love this question. So I want to ask it. I think it's a great way to bring us home. So Eric, I'll start with you, and then Duncan, I'll kick it to you. What would be a good practice for using SEO without losing your voice? For example, if you're a blogger and you don't want to sound like AI generated or something like that. So how can you maintain your voice and use SEO?
I would say just make sure that I hope I'm answering this question correctly, or what that person's looking for. You make sure your message is streamlined across the board, right? You want to make sure that it's a consistent message. Make sure that your information is impactful. Make sure that it is educational. Make sure it is. I just saw someone in the chat. Authentic. That's important as well. You have to make sure that you are resonating with your customer. So I think that's the most important thing, because there are some things nowadays that do seem robotic, right? And you don't want to sound robotic. You want to sound genuine. So keep your message genuine. I think that would be the biggest thing.
Thank you, Eric. And Duncan, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say, avoid the temptation to do cut and paste if you're doing keyword research. I think going back to authenticity and having a website that looks like a human created it, that's what SEO is. It's telling you what other people are searching for, but you can't take fragments of their keywords, or sometimes people are just typing in key phrases they're looking for. You can't take that and make that into your website copy. And so I think you've always got to take SEO as an input into what your website should look like. It is not the answer to exactly what your website looked like. I think what you really want to do is, at the end of the day, think about the user experience and what exactly would your website going to look like for someone who's going to see it for the very first time. And so make sure it's written in common English, it connected well, the sections make sense. And SEO is just helping you, guide you on, like, okay, if you're choosing between these keywords or words, really, here's the ones that you may want to use over another set.
Nice. That's wonderful to maintain authenticity and then use the SEO and the keywords as a guide as you're creating these spaces. I feel like we could probably go on a 3-hour conversation about SEO. It's just there's just so much to it. But we are now at the end of our webinar. I really want to thank Duncan and Eric for being so open and just sharing all of your expertise and answering so many questions in the chat. Thank you to all of our attendees for taking time out of your day to come here. And we hope that this was extremely helpful for you. And thank you to our partners at FedEx for helping us put on this webinar. I hope everyone here feels more prepared to use SEO and to boost your e-commerce sales. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.